Goku vs. Superman III is an episode that's long been anticipated by many people in the death battle community, in both a positive and negative sense. From what I've seen, many people were interested in the idea of a modern re-examining of the debate and a flashy new animation to go with it, whereas others were justifiably concerned about how the aftermath would shake up the community. After all, if Goku won, it'd feel in some way like it was rewarding some of the worst actors in the versus scene, but on the other hand, if Superman won again, what would the point have been in doing it? Validity of those points aside, I think the Death Battle team made a pretty compelling case for why this episode was worth making. You've probably seen the RT blog Ben wrote about this exact topic, but if you haven't, I'll put a link to it in the description for you. It's an enlightening read that even gives a bit more context as to why older death battles were made the way they were. And it even throws some more shade at Goku's Superman 2, which will never not be warranted. In fact, doing a part 3 might have been justified if only because that episode left such a bad taste in people's mouths. But we can more thoroughly examine that in another video. This episode is entirely its own thing, separate from the first 2 times this matchup was on Death Battle. I'll still bring up comparisons to the first 2 when it's appropriate to do so, but I'll be covering this episode as a self-contained production. So with that said, let's do this thing. Goku's Analysis is definitely my favorite one out of the 3 he's had. In fact, it's probably my new favorite Dragon Ball analysis of the show. Now, that's not necessarily a high bar, since I've made clear in the past that Dragon Ball doesn't interest me all that much. But despite that, this analysis actually drew me in and made a character I've long been neutral towards sound pretty cool. We get a pretty refreshing spread of Dragon Ball media in this analysis. Yeah, we get the usual boring super stuff, but the hefty dose of Z and Hero's presence makes this feel like it's hitting all the bases of what a character like Goku brings to the table. I think it also helps that the writing ties Goku's abilities into his training and personality a lot better than his older episodes did. It even takes the whole Superman figure localization tidbit from Goku Superman 2 and improves on it by elaborating on what the line was supposed to be about, which makes for a nice segue into the Super Saiyan forms. Take the fat LG VS2, there is now even less reason for anyone to watch you. This rundown has a really nice sense of progression to it. We open with the origins of Goku in his series, then building from his martial arts mastery to his Saiyan physiology and getting into his key techniques and super forms from there, each form stronger than the last. It's like we're following Goku's journey from the bottom to the top in summary form, and while I know this isn't unique to this analysis, I feel it's especially fitting for Goku. Like they said, he's come a long way from where he began, and the way this rundown is written uses that to make itself an enthralling watch. Not to mention, the editing and music choices all knock it out of the park, as per usual. Really, this analysis has it all. It feels just as comprehensive as his first episode did back in the day, but now with the benefit of modern research standards and a decade of new Dragon Ball material, it finally feels like we got to see Goku get the respect he deserves on Death Battle, at least as far as being accurately represented by the analysis goes. Even for a non-Dragon Ball fan like myself, it's great to see. But with that being said, Superman's analysis is easily my preferred one to come from this episode. It far and away feels like the most comprehensive and comprehensible DC analysis we've gotten in a long time, largely thanks to how well they cover DC Comics' many reboots and different continuities. DC's canon has always been a massive enigma to me, so to have it spelled out in the pretty simple terms of everything is canon makes taking in all of Clark's adventures and powers a lot easier. I can't get over how good the music choices are in this analysis. The jazzy ones from the preview harken back to the golden age of superheroes in a way that reminds me a lot of The Incredibles, and the rock songs embody the sort of determination you'd need to face threats to reality and punch their lights out. Very fitting for a simple solution to overwhelming problems. Speaking of which, I really liked how they framed the essence of Superman's character here. The fact that he's just an absurdly strong good guy isn't meant to be boring or some half-witted Jesus allegory, it's meant to make him the ultimate bastion of good in a multiverse teeming with evil. It fits nicely into the story of how he was created as a response to the worst kind of evil in modern memory. I think it also kind of puts into perspective why I find evil Superman stories inherently uninteresting, but that's a whole other can of worms that I'm not trying to open in this video. Circling back to how the canonicity of Superman's many stories is addressed, that also feeds into how his abilities are handled. I wasn't blown away by how they covered Clark's laundry list of powers, but I was far from bored. Superman's just one of the great classics, so hearing him be analyzed with reverence and respect is always fun. Super forms and ki attacks start to lose their meaning for me when everyone and their mom has them in Dragon Ball, but the bevy of powers Kryptonians have is uniquely Clark's thing at this point in Death Battle, so I don't have a problem with it. And impressively enough, this analysis actually gets me to give a shit about insane cosmic feats. I think part of the reason for that is Superman already being so ludicrous in terms of his strength and powers that it feels more natural for him to have these sorts of feats. It also helps that the big one in play here, the World Forger, is something we haven't seen with any other DC Herald yet, so it's fresh material for the team to work with. But I'd still find it a bit boring if the analyses presented all of that without being fun to look at, and my god if DJ and Max didn't outdo themselves on the editing with this one. Not only do they use all kinds of visuals for both Goku and Superman, from shows, to comics, to guidebook stuff, to interviews, but these analyses are strapped to the nines with amazing visuals like the Super Flare, Universe 7's labels, Goku dodging with Ultra Instinct, and Superman's heat vision right here. You can tell they went the extra mile for an episode as special as this one, so it's a good thing nothing bad happened that could have delayed the episode on that front. Nothing at all. And as a final aside, I really appreciated the nods to the original Goku vs. Superman that were included in these analyses. There's not an overabundance of them, which makes sense when this is trying to be its own thing, but they're still really nice additions nonetheless. When I heard Boomstick say the only worthy teachers left were gods, and a talking cat but mostly gods, that put a big smile on my face. It's a good way to pay homage to this matchup's history with the show while not over-relying on that to keep people watching. Overall, this is easily the definitive Goku vs. Superman as far as analyses go. They're really well written, have spectacular editing, and they held my interest all the way through. I was expecting at least the back half of Goku's analysis to grab my attention due to Ultra Instinct and the heroes stuff, but I was very impressed with just about everything, which is high praise for a matchup we've seen twice before. And that, of course, brings us to the fight for this episode. As far as its predecessors are concerned, it really only had one pair of shoes to fill, but those were some big goddamn shoes to be sure. The original Goku vs. Superman, much like its new title says, is a classic, feeling cinematic and grandiose while boasting plenty of enjoyable character moments all the way through. I knew it was a given that the new fight would be an impressive animation on a technical level, but I was curious to see if and how they would elevate this matchup beyond what came before it. So, did they manage to get me on board with this definitive retreading of a legacy matchup? Let's put the battle on and find out.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
Oh my god. I get it.
Yeah, this is a masterpiece. There's really no better way I can put it. Everyone on the Death Battle team who contributed to this fight deserves to be recognized and appreciated, so try to keep up as I start going through this fight piece by piece to highlight everything that went into this 4 odd minutes of cinema. First and foremost, the animation is indeed beautiful. Goku and Superman look incredible when put up against each other, which is helped immensely by the shaders on Goku's Fighters model and the retexturing of Superman's Fortnite model. They're both perfectly expressive and are incredibly fluid in motion at some points in the fight, which you can bet I'll make explicit note of. The forest and canyon settings for the fight look amazing, as does the planet Earth model and the broader universe around it. The choreography is fast-paced and fun to watch while still being easy for the viewer to follow. And of course, the post-viz team fucking crushed it with making all of the effects look immaculate from start to finish. When I say there is not a single frame of this animation that looks off, I really mean it. Next is the voice acting, which is no less commendable than the animation it's breathing life into. Michael Kovac does an amazing job as Goku. He didn't get a lot of opportunities to shine in his last portrayal of the Super Saiyan on Death Battle, but he's pulling out all the stops here, putting his whole chest into Goku's screams and efforts while also capturing his good-natured enthusiasm for combat during his speaking lines. He's an amazing fit for the role, and I'm so glad he got to come back for it. And on the other side of the fight, Xander Mobus does an impeccable job as Superman. The voice he puts on is a really great fit for the Man of Steel, and he really sells Clark's gradual transition from simply keeping up with Goku to allowing himself to go all out for the sake of a good fight. If not being on Death Battle for 8 years is what it took for him to come back this season and deliver not 1 but 2 excellent performances, then I'd say it was definitely worth the wait. Going further into the audio side of this battle, I want to give extra props to the sound designers at Death Battle for their work here. If you pay attention to how the fighters' movements and attacks sound in comparison to one another, you'll notice that Goku's are all iconic Dragon Ball sound effects, whereas the noises for Superman are more generic. It's a great choice that adds a lot of style to the audio and bolsters the viewing experience, enhancing the ease with which the audience can keep up with the blistering speed of the action. Massive respect to the audio team for that level of detail. And finally, we come to the soundtrack. From the first time I heard Super, I think I already knew what tone this fight was going to have, and that's because Brandon Yates basically baked the essence of Goku vs. Superman into the song. Its lyrics very much feel like they're from Goku's perspective, emphasizing his love of the fight and his desire for Superman to feel that same passion by letting loose as they trade blows. And of course, the callbacks to Alive were expected, but they're still a very welcome addition. Beyond that, my thoughts really boil down to this song being damn fun to listen to. Logan Adams absolutely kills it on the vocals, especially with that long screaming Alive when Goku fires his final Kamehameha. And Brandon's instrumentals are god tier as always. The Dragon Ball Death Battle had a kick-ass soundtrack, who could have ever seen it coming? Alright, that's just about everything out of the way. Now strap in everybody, because this fight is a roller coaster that has no off switch. We open in media res with Goku and Superman clashing while flying through a forested area, eventually running into each other in a very nice looking reference to the reset animations from Dragon Ball FighterZ. I had been anticipating a no setup opening to this fight, and while normally I'd find it to be a drawback toward the animation's overall quality, I don't feel that way here. This is Goku vs. Superman, damn it! We know what we're here for, and so do the titular fighters. We don't need a crazy inventive scenario for these two to fight at this point in the matchup's history, so why waste the resources? And besides, it's not like this means there are less chances for Goku and Superman to be in character, since we get an establishing dialogue after the initial clashes that lays out the foundations for this fight's dynamic. Goku's excited to see which of them is stronger, and Superman's more in it to humor his foe than anything else. It's a good way to start the animation that cuts right to the chase while still taking the time to show us early on how these two are approaching the battle. And it's not like we can't invent our own scenarios for how this fight came to pass anyhow. I choose to believe Goku's invitation arrived a lot like Captain America's letter for Tony in Civil War, with Stan Lee showing up to the Daily Planet like, are you Clark, cunt? Anyway, Superman flies in to throw the first proper punch, only for Goku to jump over it, leading to this brief moment where they smile at each other before the fighting continues. This is another scene that's really emphasizing the friendly nature of this battle, and while this won't be the last time we're reminded of that, I think it's good to intersperse moments like this one throughout the fight. Whether you're a Goku fan or a Superman fan, everyone agrees that these two would realistically be friends outside of Death Battle's killing rule, and playing into that during the animation as much as possible is the right way to go. But a friendly spar is still a spar, so Goku kicks Superman in the back of the head, launching him away and leading to a couple of brief combos before more fast-paced flying combat. I'm not left with much to say about this fight's many instances of extremely fast stretches of fighting, since they pretty much do what they say on the tin without much room for deeper analysis. But they're still extremely well animated nevertheless, and faster than the eye can see fighting has been a hallmark of this matchup since the beginning. It'd feel kind of wrong if this fight didn't have that for two characters with immeasurable feats of speed. Superman eventually catches up with Goku and lands a solid hit, following it up with a sweeping blast of his heat vision. But Goku's able to use instant transmission to dodge, leaving Superman to raise the forest while missing his target. Goku then appears in front of Clark and lands some swift melee strikes, demonstrating his superior martial arts mastery by darting around his foe while landing swift hits. I like how Superman reacts to the attacks as they come, holding the spots Goku struck in the midst of the beatdown. So much for I actually felt that, huh? Okay, no more cheap shots at Goku Superman 2, I promise. After landing a neat spring kick off Superman's chest, Goku proves the age-old wisdom first espoused by renowned philosopher Edna Mode. No capes! I really like this stretch of the fight where Goku's better skill gets to shine, but what I think should be highlighted even more is what Goku is saying during it. You're holding back. Give it your all. No regrets. There's a secondary dynamic emerging from within the friendly rivalry this fight has on display. I brought it up when discussing the soundtrack, but Goku wants Superman to fight him at his full power, and he can tell he's not doing that. It's not a surprise to us. We know that holding back is basically what Superman does in his every waking moment. However, Goku won't accept that, and so he spends most of this fight trying to force Superman into cutting loose, both so his foe can experience the same thrill of battle that he lives for, and so he himself can enjoy leaving it all on the battlefield, regardless of who's left standing. He's got a ways to go on that front though, since Superman reinforces that he doesn't see the need to stop holding back yet before landing a punch that sends Goku flying. This basic retaliation forms a nice contrast with the action that preceded it. Goku's skill letting him keep up with Superman, only for the latter's overwhelming strength to even the playing field with one mighty blow. It ties nicely into the verdict's findings, making the fight feel very fleshed out as a representation of the research. Seeing that Superman is still content to hold back against his current power level, Goku takes the opportunity to go Super Saiyan Blue, kicking Supes into the lake below and unleashing a Kamehameha. Michael Kovac absolutely nails the power-up scream and the Kamehameha shout in this scene, and the effects of the beam disturbing the lake look amazing. Despite Goku's new level of power, Superman still gets around the Kamehameha and punches Goku into the sky, and one clash of blindingly fast combat later, they've moved into outer space. And you know what that means. Hello, Randy Kool-Aid Man Constellation in the background. Good to see you 2 episodes in a row, old buddy. Goku gets up close and weaves around Superman's punch, lining up a dope-as-hell 1-inch punch that sends Superman reeling. He follows that up with a shower of ki attacks that Superman mostly counters with heat vision, but he's forced to grab one and throw it away from him, a choice that ends up destroying the moon. This is a great way to show off how strong even an individual ki blast from Goku is, and the expression work on Superman here as he realizes his mistake is comedy gold. It reminds me a lot of my adventures with Superman. Goku's fairly unbothered by the moon's destruction, remarking that they can just wish it back with the Dragon Balls after the fight. But Superman has a much more complex reaction, taking a moment to consider his position in his fight with Goku. He knows his foe wants to push him to his limits, but he's acutely aware of how destructive that could be, and he reminds himself of that by recalling his iconic World of Cardboard speech. But in the end, he decides that he'll show Goku the true limits of his power anyway. As I said before, I interpret his motivation for agreeing to this fight as being to humor Goku first and foremost, but I think Goku's contagious enthusiasm for combat has also started spreading to Clark by this point. It's a very wholesome evolution of their dynamic that also communicates a respect Superman is developing for Goku's tenacity. It's great stuff. Goku's very happy to hear his foe's agreeance to go all out, but he clearly wasn't ready for what that would mean for him as Superman is able to blitz him with a punch to the face. Not only does this send Goku flying, but it also shatters the boundaries between realities for a brief instant, showing us a sprite-animated scene of Super Saiyan 4 Goku smacking around Superman Blue. Before the viewer can even process what they're seeing, Superman phases through Goku's attempt to hit back and slugs him in the gut, revealing another reality that shows Goku Black engaged in a beam struggle with Ultraman. And to top this off, Superman flies past Goku as he reels from his punch and bashes him back toward Earth, with this attack showing Cosmic Armor Superman reaching toward Xeno Goku. I'm struggling to put into words how incredible this part of the fight is. It marks a turning point where this goes from a solid if standard animation to something much grander than that, which the fight will continue to expand upon as it goes forward. Not only that, but we get a couple of familiar cameos during the reality breaks as well. If you know your Death Battle history, then you know that the voice actors for the original Goku vs. Superman episodes were Masako X and It's Just Some Random Guy, and they weren't slated to come back in the leading roles here. However, Ben did indicate that they would appear somewhere, and indeed we hear the former as SSJ4 Goku and the latter as Ultraman. Though their cameos are brief, it's great to have them come back as a way to pay homage to what came before. Not like this fight doesn't do that enough already, but Masako X and Random Guy are both iconic in these roles to me, so them being here in any way was super nostalgic. After the cracks in reality subside, Superman grabs Goku mid-fall and creates a giant explosion by slamming him into a canyon, with the Saiyan's shirt basically exploding away after the Man of Tomorrow throws him against a rock formation. The following dialogue between the two keeps up their dynamic, with Superman seeing if Goku is satisfied with his display of power. Goku is thrilled with it, of course, but he knows that Superman still hasn't gone all out, so he's not about to give up just yet. And of course, Goku complimenting his suit and Superman freely admitting that his mom made it for him is pitch perfect for these two. Goku takes advantage of the opening he made by drawing Clark's attention to his suit by instant transmissioning behind him, throwing out some more flashy martial arts moves that don't even make Superman flinch. It gives off the impression that Superman is a bit exasperated by Goku's desire to fight, and so he swipes away his next strike and throws one massive punch, hoping to put their fight to rest before it gets too out of hand. Goku's already beyond that point though. He won't rest until he sees the full extent of Superman's power, and so he taps into the last of his trump cards, Ultra Instinct. After his hair lights up with a chime that still gives me goosebumps, Goku weaves away from the punch in the blink of an eye, leaving even Superman confused as to what happened. He doesn't get much more time to adjust as Goku appears in front of him with a punch to the gut, and when Clark tries to counterattack, Goku flips away while landing 4 blows that gleam with Ultra Instinct's aura. This initial dominance does wonders to establish the presence of Goku's new form, a sensation that only gets stronger thanks to how this fight structured its battle damage. Goku's had half of his gi blasted to pieces by Superman getting partially serious, but now that Goku's in the zone, his attacks are enough to tear up Superman's cape. Combine that with Goku's serious and unwavering expression as his body moves and attacks on its own, and you get a crazy good setup for what will surely be a pulse-pounding second half of the animation. That second half gets off to a roaring start as Goku and Superman turn into trails of light that race across the canyon. This has to be one of the best fast-paced mid-air clashes Death Battle has ever done, with the flashy effects, breakneck camera movements, and booming sound effects all doing wonders to capture the speed and strength of the fighters. And you can tell the animators are having a blast with putting all this together, since there's a brief shot in this rapid clash where Goku and Superman are playing rock, paper, scissors with each other. Even if it's just a visual gag, to me it cuts through all the adrenaline and action to remind the viewer that these two are massive dorks, and I love that. After the speedy clashing subsides, we get to see Superman let loose with his heat vision to the point that he carves off the top of several mountains, which simply put is raw as fuck. I wish that these severed mountaintops had still been in the air during the next scene like the storyboards had indicated they would be, but that's a pretty minor cut that I'm not bothered by. Following this, Superman flies at Goku and lands a hefty mid-flight punch, obviously setting up for the obligatory reference to his fight with Zod from Man of Steel. Thankfully though, Goku blocks the second hit and retaliates with a huge haymaker. I'm a little tired of that being the main attack that gets referenced with Superman all the time, so having Goku thwart it was honestly a little gratifying for me. Goku doesn't give Clark much breathing room following this, dodging his attacks and weaving around him so efficiently that he becomes a blur of silver movement. He's throwing hits the entire time as well, which eventually forces Superman to unleash a super flare just to get Goku off of him. This leaves him a bit winded, and in this moment, he's finally pushed to the edge. The speed and precision of Ultra Instinct are making it too difficult for him to keep up, and if Goku's proven anything during this sparring match, it's that he won't settle for anything less than his opponent's best. So Superman decides he'll get exactly that, flying out of orbit in seconds and proceeding to hightail it around the Milky Way galaxy. A massive trail of fire glows brighter and brighter around him as he dips through countless stars, with the light of each one making his power surge to incalculable heights. Any sane foe of Superman's would be shitting a brick at this sight, knowing that they'd pushed the Man of Steel to his absolute breaking point. Not Goku, though. He's smiling for the first time since entering Ultra Instinct, recognizing that he's finally getting to contend with Superman's full power. So he begins charging his ki, the aura of his life energy engulfing him in blazing light as he recites the name of his most iconic attack. And as Superman completes his final trip through a star and makes a beeline for Earth, Goku screams his lungs out as he fires a gargantuan Kamehameha. Put simply, this is one of the best climaxes to a death battle fight I've ever seen. Michael Kovac one-upping himself for the title of the best Kamehameha scream in death battle history is just the tip of the iceberg here. From the marvelous effects from the post-viz team, to the final bridge in Super hitting its climax, to the buttery smooth facial animation on Goku as he prepares and unleashes his Kamehameha, it's all perfect, no two ways about it. The sheer quality of the animation in particular blows me away every time. It legitimately looks like it could be taken right out of an official Dragon Ball video game cutscene. Massive props to David Fisher, the animator who did this and several other parts of the fight, for fleshing out a scene that never fails to give me chills. As if this couldn't get any better, Superman uses his amped up heat vision to pierce through the Kamehameha, hurtling toward Goku in a way that feels very reminiscent of the original Goku Superman. In response, Goku activates Kaioken and obliterates Earth to make his attack stronger, and it forces Superman to fly through the Kamehameha on his own. I've seen plenty of reactions where people pop off especially hard at the Kaioken, and after thinking it over for a bit, I've come up with an idea as to why. Despite how effortless Goku makes his many transformations seem, remember that all of them come with increasingly harsh physical strains on him, especially Ultra Instinct. That, combined with the massive amount of ki he's using for this Kamehameha, on top of Kaioken, is probably wreaking absolute havoc on Goku's body. This makes his drive to win especially clear for those willing to read into what the cost of his efforts is. That amount of physical recoil is probably why the Ultra Instinct avatar appears here, manifesting to fend off Superman as Goku's body nears the end of its rope. But with the amount of energy he's built up thanks to his galaxy-wide sun dip streak, not even that can stop Superman at this point, and he throws out a punch of his own to clash with the Ultra Instinct avatar, colliding in a brilliant flash of every color of the rainbow. The massive shockwave caused by this collision of universal power tears apart everything in the space around them, and before long, the power of their clash causes the universe itself to dim and flicker out. Reality itself shatters like glass, and the screen floods with energy before nothing. The screen is white, the music has crossed its peak and is fading out. And just as the viewer recovers from the shock of the final clash and questions what happened, we fade in on Goku awakening in a white void, looking up to find a halo floating above his head. It's over. Despite everything he put into matching his foe's incredible level of power, it wasn't enough. He lost, and now he's dead. And he takes it like you would accidentally dropping a fork at the dinner table. I mean, this is what, the third or fourth time for him? Death is more of a minor inconvenience in Dragon Ball than anything else, he'll be fine. But to his surprise, Superman is here with him, and he remarks about how fun their fight was with a big grin on his face. Goku, still a bit downtrodden after tasting defeat, laughs and agrees, vowing that he'll come back stronger to face Superman again. And despite his earlier hesitation to fight Goku with his full power, Clark actually expresses enthusiasm for the idea, saying he looks forward to it. And so, the two look out on a massive spread of cracks in reality formed by their battle, each one revealing a different Goku and Superman engaged in their own battles, whether it's arm wrestling on top of the Earth or playing bingo at the old folks' home. Look, I know that breaking down every last detail is kinda my thing, but this is just too much, even for me. Go check out the Death Battle Wiki's Easter egg section for this episode if you want to see a full list of what each of these realities is showing. I've already been waffling on for far too long. As Goku and Superman observe their boundless rivalry across time and space, the animation ends with the two agreeing to go another round, bumping fists as the screen fades to black. I have no words that would suffice here. This is just the perfect way to end not only this animation, but this matchup's legacy on Death Battle. We started strong with a properly cinematic clash, stumbled in the middle with a mean-spirited brawl, and finally concluded with how these two would realistically end a battle, as friends. Ben has talked a lot about how much this episode meant to him, and I can feel every ounce of that passion in how he chose to write this ending. Massive respects to him for putting the perfect bow on this gift of a battle. So, that's it. That was Goku vs. Superman's animation, and what an absolute mastercraft it was. Everything, and I do mean everything about this fight, was executed with the utmost skill and care. It's a visual treat, the characters are written just right, the track is a banger, and it caps off one of Death Battle's most recognizable pairings in a way that oozes respect for both fighters. I said this fight had all the room in the world to impress me, and well, yeah, it sure did. I honestly don't know what else I can say about it that wouldn't be redundant at this point. I tend to avoid using this term in serious analysis since it's kind of reductive and juvenile, but fuck it. It's peak fiction. Nothing more and nothing less. Anyway, the verdict is very, very good. The exhaustive detail it puts into giving Goku his due advantages while making it very clear that Superman is just too much for him does not go unnoticed by me. And while I'd expected it for a modern re-examining of one of the most inflammatory matchups in pop culture history, it's still extremely impressive to see. But that's not all this verdict has to offer. Towards the end, after all the points have been deliberated over, Wiz takes a moment to recontextualize what this matchup represents to fans of these characters. This leads him to have something of a crisis of purpose, asking why Death Battle has the right to exist if all it does is strip characters of their importance by reducing them to feats and abilities. It should be pretty obvious to anyone who follows Death Battle closely that this isn't just something that was written to pad out the ending. These are clearly thoughts Ben has had about Death Battle as a show, and a lot of them probably revolve around how people responded to Goku vs. Superman 1 and 2 in the past. But Boomstick's response to Wiz's spiral perfectly summarizes why Death Battle should exist. To be fun. Ben, Chad, and the whole Death Battle team aren't removing what makes these characters great by analyzing them in a versus context. They're appreciating them in the show's own unique way. No matter how good or bad any given episode may be, they are made for the purpose of entertaining people and showing off awesome characters to a broader audience. And as the shotgun-legged redneck says, that's okay. This is such an uplifting moment for Wiz and Boomstick, and it also perfectly suits Goku vs. Superman 2023 because of what came before it. This shows the people watching that the talented folks behind this show don't do it to spite characters or be biased toward others. Death Battle is made out of love and passion for all characters, and this episode is no exception. So how can you expect me to not fall in love with it? Frankly, I don't care how Galactus vs. Unicron turns out to be, good or bad. Season 10 of Death Battle is far and away the best season of the show in my eyes, and nothing could change that at this point. Even if that is one heck of an ironic finale, considering I put this in the description of my Cypher Wheel video. Don't I look stupid, huh? But that doesn't matter anymore. At the end of my Rick Doctor review, I said that my hesitations over Goku Superman 3 happening were largely based on how, in my mind, the debate represented an older age of Death Battle. However, now I see that I was holding onto the toxic community side of those memories a bit too tightly. Goku vs. Superman 1 and 2 happened during an era where Death Battle was framed as a show providing definitive answers to the matches they covered, encapsulated by the old adage, "Let's end this debate once and for all." But that's not what Death Battle is anymore. It's no longer done with the primary intent of answering debates that are inherently subjective and open to interpretation. Now it's got an almost entirely new team making episodes for the joy of making them. You might consider art to be too haughty a term, but it's certainly applicable here. Just like Boomstick says, Death Battle is a show that now more than ever exists to be fun first and foremost. Goku vs. Superman 2023 is an unyielding declaration of that, and that's why I respect it and the people behind it so very much. It should be pretty clear by this point that I think pretty highly of Death Battle's third Goku vs. Superman episode. It's an easy 10 out of 10, but not just because of what you see when watching the video. I wouldn't call this the show's best episode, nor can I say it's my favorite, but it is my belief that Goku vs. Superman 2023 is the most important episode of Death Battle. The tribute it pays to the show's beginnings is obvious and certainly profound, but I think what's much more meaningful is the echo this will leave behind as Death Battle continues to air. Long into the future, even after the inevitable Wiz vs. Boomstick series finale, I'll look back on this episode and remember what this show meant to me. Because Goku vs. Superman 2023 states loud and clear that Death Battle has become the show it was always meant to be. Versus debating in its ideal form is not a vector for animosity, bickering, or callous disregard for the importance fictional characters hold for people. It's instead a celebration of those characters, a broadening of horizons for the stories people can discover and enjoy, and even an avenue for artistry, juvenile and amateur though it often may be. These principles are what a show like Death Battle should always be striving to embody, and though the road to this point has been a long, arduous, and often frustrating one, I gotta say, the view's pretty good up here at the peak. If anyone from the Death Battle team happens to be watching this video, thank you. Not just for watching this, but for doing what you do on the show. Highlighting the passion you all put into Death Battle has become something of a personal mission for me in making these videos, because the show has brought so much happiness and positivity into my life that this is one of the few ways I could possibly pay that forward. If menial stuff like reading into the expressions of Anakin Skywalker or pointing out how one minor Bill Cipher line is similar to one from Discord's show helps even just a few people see past the numbers and appreciate the labor of love that is Death Battle, then that's a success in my book. So cheers! To you, to Death Battle, to everyone watching, and to Goku vs. Superman 2023. Here's to never making a part 4. If you'd like to see me and my friends react to this episode, the link to that video is in its usual place in the description. If you enjoyed this video, then please consider subscribing, and if you didn't, then thanks for sticking around this long anyway. There are many talented people who also make Death Battle videos in the description, so go and show them your support as well. Thank you all again for watching, one final time, and I'll see you again soon in the next video.